Hey there, everyone. It's Camber here with the Yo Pro No. I am so excited to introduce Nicole Bernier, 33-year-old owner and chef at Whisked, coming to us live from Atlanta, Georgia. Nicole, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, as is tradition, I typically start off each interview by introducing how we know each other and how we got connected, because that is really the core at what the Yoprono is and who the Yoprono is. So, Abby Griffith, you might remember her. We interviewed her, gosh, I think that was maybe a year ago. And so she connected us to Nicole for all the listeners who are watching or listening right now. So, Nicole, we're just going to dive right in. I would love to hear a little bit more about your background. So, in a few sentences, or maybe we can go a little bit longer, but share, where you're from originally and how you got into starting your own company.
Awesome. I'm originally from Atlanta, born and raised. I went to college in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then came back to Atlanta. I have been cooking, my entire life. As soon as I could hold a spatula by myself, I was in the kitchen cooking with my grandmother or my mom. And so I started officially in the industry at 14 and have gone everywhere and done everything. I've worked in bakeries, restaurants, hotels, B&Bs, just all sorts of things. I lived abroad for a year and learned a ton while I was in Italy. And then the pandemic hit and I got laid off, like majority of my industry. And about 2 months into the pandemic, I realized that I loved this industry still, but I could not go back to doing it the way that I was doing it. Like most everybody, I was burnt out and didn't want to give up cooking. I was actually a pastry chef for most of my career while working for other people and had always wanted my own business and just sort of dove headfirst, like I think literally head first into this.
Yeah, sounds like it. And what were you doing at the time when you were laid off? What was that? I know you said you've kind of done a little bit of everything, but what were you specifically doing at that time?
I was the executive pastry chef at a hotel in downtown Atlanta that had opened up not too long before the pandemic hit, actually.
Okay. Okay. And tell me, I mean, that must have been really scary jumping into something like that, especially during a pandemic. I mean, anyone who started something new during a pandemic probably was like, oh, what am I doing? What have I gotten myself into? So walk us through those feelings and how you kind of endured that and got through some of those challenges.
Yeah, it was, I think that the afraid part or the scared part kind of came later after I had already opened it and done all of that. And then I had my first like year open and my first summer where, in the industry, everything kind of slows down, people go on vacation. And that was when it started to hit of like, oh my God, I'm in charge of all of my own money now, all of my own income. But starting out, it was exciting. It was the most insane thing I've ever done. But I had an amazing support system, friends and family really just banded together. I think they were doing anything they could to have me not go back into a normal kitchen. So they were like, we are going to help make this successful. So I was super lucky to have them do whatever I needed, basically. I mean, my mom delivered for me for a year. My dad would help with big catering orders. My friends were in my social media and made my logo for me. I mean, just like,
Yeah.
Everything.
You had like a tribe helping you.
I did, yeah. And it made all of the difference. It made it less scary. It made it seem more attainable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I started out with just doing pre-made meals, which I think was what was needed at the time. Because I started in June of 2020. And even at that point, people were so tired of being at home and cooking, 3 meals a day now, 7 days a week. They've got kids all over the place. So this is not a meal kit. It's like a pre-made, heat it and eat it kind of meal.
Okay.
I wanted to kind of just make it easier for people.
That's great. And that was my next question was, what do you do at Whisked Away now? Like, what does that look like? Is it still the pre-made meals?
That is consistently like the weekly thing. I also have added private chef dinners. I've added virtual cooking classes, which will eventually turn into in-person cooking classes. And then sort of like corporate or like larger company box lunches
Mhm.
or charcuterie box sort of. I kind of say I can put anything in a box.
Yeah. So you're like really full service. You do a
Yeah.
lot, but you're
I do a
mobile.
lot.
You're mobile. Like do you have a location or what are you
I
doing?
I do not have a location. I work out of a shared kitchen in Atlanta,
Mhm.
which has been great. I started out of my apartment, as you know, most people tend to, and then when I was barely living in it and mostly working in it, I decided that something has to go, and that was business has to leave my apartment. But yeah, so I have a pickup location that is a restaurant near my house that is closed on Mondays, and they're very nice, and they let me use their patio. And
Cool.
then I have delivery drivers that deliver um, every week. But other than that, I kind of pack up my car and drive around whatever needs to be
Mhm.
done.
So
So
other than the drivers and the kitchen support, are you doing this on your own?
for the most part, yes, I do have a marketing team.
Oh, good.
That was other than the delivery drivers, that was the first thing that I said that I was going to hire out because I am not good at social media. I know it's important and it's basically how I started and have thus far run my business,
Right.
but it's not my strong suit. And
Yeah,
when my
it's
friends
important.
yeah, when my friends decided that, they had to go back to their normal jobs, I said, "Okay, well, somebody else has to do this for me besides me."
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have
Okay,
a great
cool.
team.
Have you found that that's really supported your business?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Cool.
Yeah,
I would
they
imagine, especially like, I mean, I just think of my own personal feed when I'm looking and I see something that looks beautiful and I'm like, well, yeah, I want to hire them. So I
yes.
can imagine that does wonders for your business.
It does. Yeah, they have changed. I mean, it looked cute before, but now it's like professional and there's a
Yeah,
theme and,
right.
I'm like a real business now.
Yeah, we'll have to link that in the notes later. Um, as far as challenges, I know we talked about, the challenge of being laid off and then kind of pivoting from there. Would you say that's your biggest challenge that you've experienced as a young professional? So since you graduated, from college, since that time, have there been other hardships that you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, being in this industry, in the food industry, is not for the faint of heart. So that alone is sort of an internal struggle of, having to cancel on family and friends, and then busting your ass to get to a certain point. And then, as much as I hate to say it, like even still being a female in this industry is hard because it is still a very male dominated
Hmm.
industry. And there are a lot more, celebrity female chefs, which help. But in the day to day, I've pretty much only worked for male chefs.
Wow.
So that is just a whole different kind of ball game.
Hmm. Hmm. And how have
Yeah.
you kind of pushed through that? How have you overcome that?
Sheer will. And sometimes a lot of wine.
Yeah. You're
um,
not the first person to tell me that in an interview.
I'm sure I am not. Um, but yeah, it's just like determination, knowing, that this is what I want to do. This is what I've always wanted to do. And I'm not gonna let some idiot get in my way just because they don't know how to manage people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I've worked as much as I've worked for crazy people, I've worked for equal amounts of great people. So,
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
are two sides to every coin, but it is
Yeah.
definitely a tough industry.
No, absolutely. And just because you mentioned, poor management. One of the questions I like to ask young professionals is about why they stay at a company and why they leave. And so I'm assuming that some of what you just shared is part of why you ended up leaving. It sounds like you experienced a lot of different types of industries within food, within, the industry, but tell me a little bit more about what specifically, if you look back at those jobs that you had prior to starting your own company, what were some of those reasons that you left?
Oh boy. That is a big question. I definitely left almost every job I've ever had later than I should have. I'm very loyal, sometimes to a fault, especially when I may or may not be being treated as well as I should be. And I just kind of push that aside and just do the job that needs to be done. I do other people's jobs that need to be done just because they need to be done.
Yeah.
So, while that's great for employers, it's not always great for me and
Mhm.
my well-being and mental health and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just poor people management, poor leadership, owners that just like don't seem to get it. Um, Unrealistic expectation. There's just a laundry list of things. And then coming to the realization of I cannot physically do this anymore
Mhm.
without losing my mind.
Mhm. Mhm.
And trying to find that point before I'm like, I'm not giving my 2 weeks, I'm just done. I like to give proper notice.
Right. But
Um,
sometimes you're pushed so hard. It's like, where do you draw the line? And I think
yeah.
that's a really important piece of advice, especially if people find themselves more aligned with your type of traits, right?
Mhm.
Super loyal, getting things done just because they have to get done, not because, the person who should have done it did it. Like those are the kind of things that are really important. So I think people who are listening or watching this interview can definitely learn a lot from that. So thank you for sharing. I know that it's vulnerable to share hardships, and so I appreciate it. And you're not alone. Many people have said this exact same thing, and so that's why the Yoprono exists. Um,
Yes, I have no
just
doubt.
because we're mindful of time, and wrapping up with a few final questions.
Mhm.
What are some things that you think are important as you continue to work with people, maybe clients or maybe some of these companies that you work for, to do like, team building exercises, and whatnot? Older or experienced professionals is what I like to call them. What do you want experienced professionals to know about you as a business owner, but you as a young professional?
Um, I have been in the industry a long time and I have, made my mark in the industry, but as a young business owner, I'm still kind of, in the grind of the day to day. I'm excited to hire my first employee, but that, I will do same as I'm very loyal. It's the same as when I work for other people. I'm very loyal to my customers, my clients, my someday employees. I just want to do right by everybody. And I try to do that on the first go around, but I will always make it right. And, I just want it to be a good, successful business that brings people what they need. They need help with meals. If they want to try a new experience, if they want to host a party and have, a cooking class for their girlfriends, I
Mhm.
want to bring that joy that I have from food to other people.
Awesome. Well, I would totally hire you to come to Greenville, but I don't live in Atlanta. So we'll
I
have to.
travel.
Okay, you travel. That's good to know. Everyone who's
Thank you.
listening that is not in Atlanta, she travels. All right. But before we wrap up, are there any words of advice that you have for the audience, whether they're young professionals or experienced professionals listening to this?
Um, Follow your gut. I put mine on a shelf far too many times, knowing that what was going on wasn't right and not speaking up, and just do what makes you happy. Like, life is too short to be miserable, to come home and drink a bottle of wine, not because you enjoy the wine, but because you're trying to get rid of your day.
Yeah.
Just do what makes you happy, and you will never fail.
Yeah. Love it. Great way to end the interview. Nicole, thank you so much for your time today and for joining the GoPro.
Absolutely. Thank you.